Hello and welcome back to Patroma Therapy. Today we're going to talk about poetry, rhythm and rhyme, and all that good stuff. So, how are you today?
First of all, I don't know what poetry is and how is it different from regular writing, but let's get weird. I decided we give it a go.
Well, first of all, you're in therapy.
I
This is
know.
Patroma Therapy, where we both discuss different ideas and hopefully I'll feel a little bit better afterwards. And we hope that our audience has a few new thoughts and maybe they might write a poem or go read a poem. So, greetings to everyone in our audience. And, for me, uh, poetry is highly concentrated language around an emotional or intellectual experience.
Did you have one?
Right now, right
What
now,
now? You're having one right now?
I, I think I am.
So
I'm
you're
sweating.
experiencing
No,
poetry.
no. What I mean is it is the language is highly concentrated. So sometimes it's rhyming, sometimes it's not rhyming, sometimes every other line rhymes, sometimes in between the lines rhyme. So parsing or discussing you know the superiority of rhyme or not rhyme. Um, I don't know. Like there's a poem that I like very much, written by Robert Herrick in the 17th century. He's an English writer, and it is in the genre of the carpe diem poems, which just means seize the day. So quite often the imagery of flowers or chasing flowers or picking flowers is used, and these are poems written by men. And Andrew Marvell, Robert Herrick, all those guys wrote the carpe diem poems. So the theme is to seize the day, to enjoy the moment. So the name of this poem is called "To the Virgins to Make Much of Time." So a few episodes before, we discussed time and how time is passing and it always leads to death.
Hmm.
So love and death and
And love again.
sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Those
Yeah.
are those are topics of poetry. So I'm going to read the poem very quietly.
Okay.
Gather ye rosebuds while ye may. Old time is still a flying, and this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. The glorious lamp of heaven, the sun, the higher he's a getting, the sooner will his race be run, and nearer he's to setting. The age is best which is the first, when youth and blood are warmer. But being spent, the worse and worst times succeed the former. Then be not coy, but use your time, and while ye may go marry, for having lost but once your prime, you may forever tarry. That's it.
Well, this is good rhyming poetry, what I call the poetry, because the poetry that does not rhyme, it's a prose. Am I correct?
Mm. Well, he has the word in there, coy, COY. So the word coy is used in these Carpe Diem poems to refer to a girl who's sort of pretending that she doesn't want to be with a man, kind of a girl who's a woman who's teasing. And then the man is speaking to the woman, saying, "Let's just stop all these games. Come on, you know you're interested in me. Let's get with it." And so that the theme is kind of universal. Romantic encounters, and it rhymes.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I like it because it rhymes. And the universal as well. You take my hand, close your eyes, feel my heart.
Mm-hmm.
All the same, just in different words. But I love poetry. Not in the way someone who's educated like you in poetry might love poetry, but I love poetry in a simple way, like a everyday consumer kind of sort of way. That's why I don't understand much of it. But if it rhymes, it works for me. It makes wonders, basically. Um,
Well, the other thing about poetry is that I believe it is something that can be universally appreciated. You don't have to be educated in what century the poet lived. It's just like food, you know, you don't have to be a chef or a connoisseur to enjoy, spaghetti and meatballs or some kind of, uh, sushi or whatever whatever it is you're eating. You don't have to know the ingredients to
just the
enjoy it.
chicken,
You just eat it.
chicken. Yeah, just the chicken. Would chicken
Yeah,
qualify? Yeah.
chicken. Yeah,
Yeah.
chicken.
Yeah.
Well, there's this other poem that I like. It's by William Butler Yeats, and he was born in 1865, died in 1939. So he's kind of spanning two centuries, the turn of the century. And it is called the Song of the Wandering Aeneas.
Okay.
It is one of the most beautiful poems in the world, and it has a kind of song-like quality. And I remember I was invited to a dinner of a former student, and she had her uncle, who was some kind of Persian ambassador or something. These were like, high class folks from the Middle East. Anyhow, and after we had this wonderful dinner, we were all sitting around with a glass of, I don't know, whatever we were drinking. And then people decided that they would just start telling or reciting poems they liked. I thought that was the ultimate in civilization, is hanging around with people who know poetry. So this is a poem that, well, he read some from the Rubaiyat, but this is a poem that I like very much. It's a man speaking,
Mm-hmm.
and fire is quite often a symbol for passion, and so the man who is speaking says, "I went out to the hazel wood because a fire was in my head, and cut and peeled a hazel wand, and took a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing, and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream and caught a little silver trout. And I laid it on the floor, and I went to blow the fire aflame. But something rustled on the floor, and someone called me by name. It had become a glimmering girl with apple blossoms in her hair, who called me by name and ran and faded through the brightening air. Though I am old from wandering through hollow lands and hilly lands, I will find out where she has gone, and kiss her lips and take her hands, and walk among long dappled grass, and pluck till time and times are done the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun."
The longer we read, the more I like it. It's even better than watching a movie because, first of all, it's quite short and there is such an intense energy in it in such a short period of time. And
Yes.
and the images, when you say words, it brings up images in my mind. And I caught myself thinking, isn't it interesting and something new to me, which I've never tried before, even though I read poems, I guess, maybe the wrong ones. But love poems, not love poems like this one. Maybe I should start reading love poems. And before, what I had was kind of, because there are all sorts of poems, I'm sure, depressing poems or
Yes.
stoic poems. I don't know, one kind of cowboy poems, maybe. I'm not sure.
Well, this one is written in 3 stanzas. So the first one is, "I went out into the woods," and the second stanza, he's caught this fish and he's looking at this fish that transforms into a girl. And then the third stanza is, he's old, wondering what happened to that girl from the past. And I think we all have some long lost loves of someone we met briefly or someone we were together with briefly. So even though the words are the same words, when I read it, I think of someone I once knew, or when you read it or you hear me read it, you briefly think of someone you once knew. And this is a narrative poem, which means it tells a story. I went out into the woods. I, caught a fish. The fish turned into a girl, and she ran away, and now I miss her. So when I tell you those 4 lines in prose, just common prose, you're not having a poetic experience, right?
I do. Basically, by the way, I do. And yeah, I want to also say that it's interesting what the universe takes someone from you when you've just getting acquainted, because that's the moment when you meet each other, you don't know each other. That's you see each other best side. Basically, you don't know any
Well,
shortcomings and stuff.
that's the high point of the relationship.
Exactly.
when you don't know the other
Isn't that?
when you don't know the other person.
That's very depressing, right? When you understand that that's it, and
No,
that's how.
really, it's all downhill from then. Because just think of some of the colossal. I'm thinking of some of the colossal mistakes I've made in relationships where, it just looks so good from the beginning. Everything was so charming. I kept thinking this is like the most amazing thing in the world. And then as you get to know the person, it's like, yeah, it really wasn't so amazing.
Well, that is called life. And
Yes.
yeah, we have to get used to it, because in the ideal world, if we lived in the ideal world, but we don't. Okay, we don't live in the ideal world. What you mentioned a few lines from Shakespeare the other day. Is that what they call Shakespearean rhyme? What you've just read?
No.
No.
Shakespeare wrote sonnets, and Shakespeare wrote plays. So what this is, if we look, this is 3 stanzas. Let's look at the rhyme: wood, head, wand, thread, wing, out, stream, trout.
Mm-hmm.
So that's regular rhyme. It's written in regular rhyme, 3 stanzas. So this is a fairly, I would call it a classical poetic form.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that is quite often taught in school, this type of, because it's easy to understand. But, you can read a poem when you're 15 or when you're 25 or when you're 45, and you get different things out of it. As I become older, I go back and I look at some of these poems thinking like, oh my gosh, this is like it just has a different meaning. It just has a different meaning. But back to, Shakespeare was, wrote all kinds of things. Like, if I ask you the question, like, well, did Tolstoy write a lot of words? Like, you would say, yeah. Or if I said, well, so what kind of writing does Dostoevsky do? So some people are writing prose, some people are writing poetry. Do you have any poems you like to read to our audience? Anything you've got?
I remember. I know that you know that I like this one short, but I don't. I will not be able to recall it right away. It's called "I Am," and it was written by. I have to Google it. "I Am" by. I guess the British dude. Let me see. "I Am" poem. I'm sure Google has it. I know Google is evil, but it's also, helpful.
Well, I want everything. I always imagined that we're like in real therapy. We're just sitting across from each other, or we're in a real classroom. So I would never let my students pull up their phones and look up stuff. I would just say, tell me in your own words.
John Clare.
Or just tell me.
John Clare. I found it. No, it's easier to find in Google than to remember. So it's John Clare, and the poem is "I Am."
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I am. I think I am. Therefore, what was it the other day from Descartes?
Descartes. I think, therefore I am.
Yeah, but that's not like that at all.
Okay, but one of the things I just want to preemptively say,
right,
that when you read, just go a little bit slower, because you tend to kind of like speed everything up with your lizard
That's because
brain.
I'm very nervous. Okay, but I'll slow down and see if it works. But if it won't,
Okay.
don't push me. Okay, so
Okay.
I go slow. Let's go.
Okay, go
Let's go slow. It might sound weird, but again, don't push me.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I am, yet what I am, none cares or knows. My friends forsake me, like memory lost. I am the self-consumer of my woes. They rise and vanish in oblivious host, like shadows in love's frenzied, stifled throes. And yet I am and live like vapors tossed. Well, this is the first part, and there are five. Yeah, and there are
Okay,
five, and I loved it. I absolutely
So what
loved
you're
them
saying,
all.
there are
By
five stanzas. There's five stanzas. That was the first one.
yeah, and it's written by John Clare, and he also lived, I think, in 16th century, about Shakespeare's time. Maybe they even knew each other. I don't know, but it's interesting how British and English speaking poetry differs from Italian, for instance, or from Russian. It's I don't know why I even like it, to be honest.
Well, you know, there was the tradition in you know, there are in like the Old Testament, in the Old Testament, there are the Psalms, Psalms, the Psalms attributed to David, and these are songs that are sung. So the church has its tradition of poetic writing, and then the Middle Ages had the various guilds that came together, and they would gather around the cathedral square area, and people would be selling their wares, and maybe someone would be reciting a poem. And then slowly the theaters began to be constructed, like the Globe Theater and various theaters where people would actually go sit and pay a little something and listen to actors perform and speak the poetic words. And then as it moves on to more modern times, we can read poetry online. We can go to poetry slams where people just get up in front of a microphone and like start, you know, rapping or rhyming. So I guess, you know, as you were saying, John Clare was living around the time when people were actually going to listen to some poetry. Would it be okay to read that first stanza again? Can you read it again?
I don't know. I'm not good at reading first stanza, even the second ones. But
didn't you just read it? You just read it.
Yeah, but it wasn't good. And it takes special skills to read poem. But
no, I liked it. What I'm just saying is I wanted to make some comments on it, that there's the imagery of vapors and dust and things that are
really?
evaporating and disappearing. And then he mentioned something about, you know, this is sort of, I'm paraphrasing now. I'm just paraphrasing. This is my spoken word to the world, and I'm kind of misunderstood. And you know, I only thing I have is these words that I'm trying to communicate with, and that's just the first stanza. So I really like it. I think it is.
Well, if you liked it, but let me read the last one. Let's see if you like it.
Okay, this is
I'll try to go slow again. I long for scenes where man has never trod, a place where woman never smiled or wept, there to abide with my Creator, God, and sleep as I in childhood sweetly slept, untroubling and untroubled where I lie, the grass below, above the vaulted sky. That's it. That was the last stanza.
Wow.
You liked it?
No, I like it. Yes, because what he's saying is kind of what we've talked about an episode or two ago about the desire for sort of a paradise experience. He wants to be at a place where he's back in the garden. He's back with his Creator God, and you know, where man has not trod all over the earth and made a wreck of nature during the Industrial Revolution or whatever. We were always trampling on nature, and women are smiling, they're crying, they're laughing, they're destroying man. I hear that last stanza as a desire for wholeness, a desire for some blissful state. I really like it.
Yeah, I like it. I like it too.
What do you like about the ending?
Well, it's sort of hope. There is sort of hope for something better than we're having, or he was having at the time, and this hope, it touches, I don't know, it hits close. I don't know. Probably we're all trying to find our way, and we all fail. Each time we try, we fail and fail. Each time again, we try and we fail again. But there is still hope, which we guides us. And this last stanza says, uh, uh, "I want to get to that place. I maybe never be able to do that, but I want to, and that gives hope."
Ah, yes.
But that was old
Well,
poetry,
you know,
but
we
400 years ago.
no. Well, what I wanted to comment. Some of our listeners are new to Petroma therapy, and some of y'all have been around for about a year. When we started with an episode about the myth of Sisyphus, who is, pushing the rock up the hill, and that's kind of like what you were just saying. Like, you just, day after day, we have to trudge through the day. But there's something noble about trudging. There is something noble about the human experience, and I think that one of the things that poetry can do is it can give us a moment of recognition. Like, maybe we recognize something about death. Maybe we recognize something about love. Maybe we recognize something about springtime or autumn or fall. And maybe we don't even understand it. Like some poems, I just read them. Well, I would call it eat the poem. You just eat the poem. And you don't have to understand why a peach is delicious, just to eat it. So the second level of poetry is like reading about it, studying it, getting your pen out and like writing down symbols and stuff. But when you eat a peach or when you eat an apple or a pear,
pear, yeah,
you're not
these
like
words.
studying it. You just eat the pear.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you not to change the subject, but I've seen this TV show called Breaking Bad, and somehow the Walt Whitman got his book, his poems got mentioned in it. Is he modern American writer, or was he leave? Did he leave a long time ago as well?
No. Okay, there's two main threads in American poetry. One is Whitman and one is Dickinson. So Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson writes short, very concise, highly concentrated poetry. Very, very short and highly concentrated. And Whitman writes epic, long. He has some shorter ones, but the two trends in American literature are towards the long epic or the short condensed. So Whitman's considered the father of the long poem, and he loved to go out into nature and to wander around and like feel the grass and listen to the birds. And so he was not a romanticist. He was an American writer, and he's one of the very first giants of American poetry. And the collection of his poems is called one of his collections is called The Leaves of Grass. The Leaves of Grass. So just as you look out onto a field of grass, you can see it as a whole, or you can lay down on it and roll in it, or like look at it. Or when you're a child, you're like lay in the grass and like pick little bugs up, or So The Leaves of Grass. Whitman was writing around the time of Abraham Lincoln, and he has a poem about the death of Abraham Lincoln. Emily Dickinson lived in Massachusetts, I believe, and she lived in her father's house, never married. And she looked out her window, and when she's up in her second floor bedroom looking out the window, guess what she looked into every day? What was right next to her house? That would really inspire a lot of poetry.
I'm in love with Alan Watts' lectures, and when I listened one, he mentioned T.S. Eliot. I don't remember the context, but just the name.
T.S. Eliot.
Yeah. T.S. Eliot. He's an American poet too.
Yeah. Well, no. Okay, so Emily Dickinson looked out onto a graveyard. So the themes of love and death were prominent in American poetry. Now, Dickinson and Whitman are the two giants. Or there are many. There are a lot of giants, but those are the two. Those are two greats in American literature. T.S. Eliot is British.
Oh.
And Eliot is a very, very learned, scholarly poet. He's one of my favorites. He has The Wasteland. He has the Four Quartets. He has, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, who it's the story of a man who can't decide whether he should talk to these women. What should he do with his hair? Should he dare to eat a peach? And he's in love, but he doesn't know how to connect with women. Like, it's the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. I think that you would like that. I'm going to read that again once therapy is over.
Thank you. Me too, because somehow I caught myself enjoying kind of just reading it. I didn't expect that I will have that feeling, but when I read few lines from, I don't know, this afternoon when you told me we're going to discuss poetry, so I just Googled some kind of poetry, I guess, and I found a few. I don't even know who wrote them, but few lines which I really, really liked, and they were very much like I read you from John Clare's "I Am" poem.
Well, tell us some of the other ones that you liked.
I don't even remember them. I was going to prepare, but then I didn't have time, and I closed the page, and I won't be able.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine.
It wouldn't be fine.
Earlier, we had talked about rhyming poetry, and there's a poem by Robert Burns, written in the 18th century. 18th century. He's an English writer, and this is a classical rhyming poem, and he's comparing his love to a red rose. My love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair thou art, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the sea's gone dry. Till all the sea's gone dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. And I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. And fare thee well, my only love, and fare thee well a while, and I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 miles.
I remember the first words with which you opened this conversation today, where you said that poetry is very concentrated, very concentrated energy, and I thought, is this supersedes that supersedes music? Because music, I mean, there are a few degrees of the I don't know, energy you want to express. First you express in words, and then poetry, and then music, probably the highest level, maybe classical music, or I don't know, just whatever rhymes with you. And sometimes, thank you for this conversation. I'm going to find a book and read it from first to last page, and tell you what it was and how I felt. Just because you chosen this topic, I feel I bettered myself a little bit. Like, I've been in good therapy.
Very good. Well, I enjoyed myself as well, and we look forward to our next episode, and we'll see you around the bend.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
And stay safe.